This is my grandma and grandpa, and I am interviewing them for my history project. So, Grandpa, can I start with your full name, and can you tell me when and where you were born?
My name is Robert Eugene Dubois. I was born in New Madrid, Missouri in 1936 on August the 1st.
Okay. And Grandma, can I get your full name and when and where you were born?
Okay. Priscilla Dubois. You want the Smith before that, and Sharkey is my maiden name.
Okay.
And I was born November 30th, 1939
Okay. And do you know where?
in Taylor, Texas.
Okay. Grandpa, can you tell me where our family came from and when they came in
Well,
to
the
America?
Dubois side of the family originally came from France. We can date it back to 16th century. My family migrated to Newfoundland, Canada, and then came down through the United States. Most of them settled in Indiana and Missouri, and some of them went on to naturally Louisiana,
Mhm.
in the French Connection part of Louisiana.
Thanks. And Grandma, can you tell me where your side of family came from and when?
Well, they came from Slovenia, and they we're like, I'm like fourth generation American, I think. So, you know, it's been, they came in probably the 20s or 15s.
Okay.
Yeah, is where they started.
Okay, and did they just come straight to Texas or?
We don't really know. I think they probably came in through Galveston
Okay.
from Europe, and we don't know a whole lot about that.
Okay. Grandpa, can you tell me your earliest childhood memory?
Well, it wasn't very early. It was like I was 5 years old, getting ready to go to kindergarten, and the reason I remember that, everybody was getting blue jeans, and Mama always bought knickers for us, and I was so afraid that I was going to have to go to kindergarten wearing knickers. But she finally, a couple of days before, we did get blue jeans, and it made me happy. Which is a ridiculous thing, but that is actually the first thing I ever remember.
It just stuck with you.
Yeah.
What about you, Grandma? What's your earliest childhood memory?
Earliest childhood thing. We lived in a little town, and Daddy made for me a wooden chair and table set. And the way he made it, he went away on a trip with the railroad, and he was gone like 6 weeks. And during that time he made that chair and table, he made it with a pocket knife and wood.
Wow.
I think out of probably packing cake crate or something like that. So it's kind of
You
interesting.
just remember getting it?
Yeah.
Okay. Grandpa, who is the oldest relative you remember as a child, and what can you remember about them?
Well, the oldest was my grandpa Taylor, and I remember because he was a farmer, and you know, the reason I also remember him, when I was a teenager, I spent about every summer there, 3 months, you know, visiting him and helping on the farm and everything, so.
And Grandma, who is your oldest relative you remember as a child, and what do you remember about them?
I had a grandmother, and I can vaguely remember her sitting in a chair rocking. She was quite elderly and quite old, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And that's my earliest
Memory of her.
great grandmother. Am I talking loud enough? I wonder. You know, try to find out.
Grandpa, what was your first job, and how much did it pay?
I was a newspaper delivery person. I had probably only 15 people to deliver in 2-block radius, and the pay I don't really remember, but it was probably 5 cents a paper, and I would get like a penny a thing, and usually the paychecks would only be like maybe $3 to $9 depending on how much I collected. Also, if some people didn't pay for 3 weeks, I didn't get paid for their money. So.
And what about you, Grandma? Do you remember what your first job was and how much it paid?
I worked in a dime store,
Okay.
and I got 40 cents an hour.
What do you do in a dime store?
Well, I cleaned the counters and waited on customers and so forth, you know. They called it a 5 a dime at the time,
Oh.
downtown Austin. And I think my first paycheck may have been $8. I worked every day after school and on Saturday. And I paid my daddy $2 in rent.
$2 in rent every
So
week?
Yeah, so that was like, I made like $6. It was plenty at the time.
Yeah.
You know, we spent a nickel on the bus.
Oh gosh.
Yeah.
Grandpa, what world events had the most impact on you when you were growing up, and did any of them personally affect your family?
Well, probably the first one I remember was the Second World War, and again, most of my experiences are sort of little silly things, and the impact on it was because my uncle was so set on going into the military to fight for the United States, and he tried 3 different branches. Because he was colorblind, he couldn't get into it until he finally got into the Army. So I don't know, it's just, that's one of the reasons I remember it. He had such a hard time, and he wanted, and then also I had a lot of other uncles that went in also as fast as they could.
Mm-hmm. So World War II had a big effect on your family?
Well, yeah, and like I say, it was just history, and I think it had a big effect on everybody. So.
Yeah. And what about you specifically?
Well, the only thing during the war, I remember the rationing, and we couldn't buy bubble gum except one piece at a time, and maybe the grocery stores wouldn't get it in stock except once a month, and everybody would run as fast as they could as soon as they found out it was there to get their little stick of bubble gum. And it just impacted the whole United States on ration and everything. Everybody had to suffer, and everybody had to pitch in a little bit.
Uh-huh.
So.
And what about you, Grandma? What world events had the most impact on you when you were growing up, and did any of them personally affect your family?
Well, in the Second World War,
Mm-hmm.
okay, again, like he was talking about rationing, I remember rationing and that we couldn't bake a cake because we didn't have any sugar, because we couldn't buy sugar. And other than that, we just kind of lived through it. My dad had a job working in Washington, D.C.,
Mm-hmm.
and he got drafted. So he was going to bring his family to Texas so that he could make sure that we were okay while he was gone, put us back with the family. And it turned out, just when he got down here, he had a problem being flat-footed.
Mm-hmm.
And so they didn't really want to take him. And then he got a job working on the railroad, so he didn't have to go to the Army, actually.
Oh, okay.
And in talking about that, railroad was one of the government jobs, sort of like being in the Army or whatever at that time. It was real important to the war effect.
Mm-hmm. And
So.
they had like the same benefits and everything.
Well, no, not that,
No.
but it was more, it was what's called a job that needed to be done.
Essential, yeah.
An essential thing. That's why the being in the railroad was okay for not going to the Army.
Okay. Grandpa, what was your chosen profession, and why did you choose that? What job or career did you want to do with your life, and why did you choose that?
It wasn't a chosen profession, it just sort of fell on me. Being in the Air Force, I had just graduated, and it had been early September. School was getting ready to start, and I decided to go to high school and practice football with the kids that was getting ready. And my best friend drove up behind me as I got out of the car and said, "Bob, we're going to join the Air Force." So I said, "Okay, let's go." And that's where I became a professional military. I spent 22 years in the Air Force. and that's how I got into it.
Came up to you and said, "Hey, we're doing it."
Yeah, we're gonna be airmen, and so we were airmen.
Oh my gosh. And what about you, Grandma? What career did you do, and why did you choose it?
I worked for the government for a little while, and then I got married and had a whole bunch of kids, and stayed home. And then when I got to be in my late 30s, I decided to go to college and get a degree so I could teach, and I taught for 25 years.
How was that for you going to school later?
It was really kind of interesting. It was like I made better grades than everybody else.
You had that experience to help you out.
Yeah, so it was okay. And, you know, it didn't hurt me to be an older student. It was interesting.
Okay. Grandpa, where were you when Kennedy was assassinated, and what was your reaction?
Well, I was in the Air Force then. I worked in the hospital squadron in the dental clinic, and it came over the radio that he was shot, and I was working with the dentist at that time, and it just surprised everybody. And the one thing that I was so surprised about and sort of sad, one of the kids in there, he said, "Well, great, I'm so glad he got shot," and it really disappointed me. I mean, so, but I remember that to the day, you know.
And Grandma, where were you when Kennedy was assassinated, and what was your reaction?
Well, we were very, very sad. I was at my mother's house, and I had a little bitty baby at the time, and my grandmother was really for Kennedy. She really liked him a lot, and she was really pushing to do it. And we just were very, very shocked and very, very upset.
Grandpa, how is the world today different than it was when you were a child?
It's very hard to say. You know, there were so many things that wasn't there then. You know, my dad owned the first Model T car. That was his first car, and you had to hand crank it to get it started. It didn't have a starter button or anything, and everything just progressed so fast. You know, just like the airplane. You know, 50 years, you can't compare it. You know, there was no computers. You see Facebook today, where people post on it. You know, dial phone, and people don't even know what a dial phone is. So it's hard to compare. It's just amazing, all the computers and everything that there is now, and like the first computer filled up a room. Now you got them on phones. You know, you can do in your hand, little computer, anything. So it's just really hard to describe. It's so different.
Hard to imagine. And what about you, Grandma? How's the world today different than what it was when you were a child?
You know, what he just said about everything is different in a lot of ways. I think the biggest thing, it's like Texas, I think, became populated because we had air conditioning. I think that before we had air conditioning, people didn't come down here. They didn't
hardly go west of the Mississippi River.
Right.
Yeah.
Because they couldn't stay in the heat. And when we started getting air conditioning, everything now is air conditioned, so it doesn't matter if we have the heat.
So we had a lot of technological changes. What about like people too? Have you noticed how people act today differently than they did then?
When my children were little, I had all the windows open, and they could play outside, and I could know what was going on outside by having the window open and being able to look out and see what they're doing. Nowadays, everyone keeps their windows closed, and kids stay inside and play on computer games, and it's a really different kind of life, really. They had a lot more.
And also, you were friends with almost the whole neighborhood, whereas nowadays, you're friends with maybe the next door neighbor on each side and maybe somebody across the street, but that's about it in the neighborhood.
Or even worse, you don't like your neighbor.
Yeah, also, yeah.
Oh, goodness. Are there any family heirlooms, pictures, or newspaper articles that have been passed down?
Not basic in my family that I know of, but I don't know about grandma's.
We had one thing. My great grandparents had a house fire. which meant they destroyed everything that they had, except years later, they found out that a neighbor had saved what's called a library table out of that fire and had it in her garage, and it was in very bad condition. But she called my grandmother, and my grandmother went and got it, and then my mother took it and refinished it. And that was one piece that was left from our family,
From that house fire.
Yeah.
from that house fire. And we got a lot of stuff that happened, you know, like me, I've got my wedding dress. I don't know if you want to show it
Yeah.
or not.
Absolutely. And these dresses you still have?
Uh-huh, I still have them. And this is my first communion dress.
First communion?
And then this was a dress that I had for my prom, my senior prom.
Wow. And can you tell me anything about these dresses?
Well, that one's made with 50 yards of material. My grandmother, my grandmother and my mother made that dress. And then
The red one.
The red one. And my mother made that one.
The communion dress?
Right. And then my wedding dress was made, it has this Venetian lace on it, and it was made with re-embroidered lace with little tiny pearls. It was a beautiful dress that my daughters actually wore for their wedding.
No.
And Emma, can I bring up something?
Huh.
That red dress, do you remember that red dress?
Yes,
Huh?
I do.
Yeah, you wore it to prom also.
I wore this to my prom.
Yeah?
That's what I did. It was a big dress. It definitely had a lot of fabric to it. Oh my goodness.
And what Grandma was talking about that, I do remember there was one thing, and I didn't even think about it, that was passed on in our family, but it wasn't passed to me, and maybe that's why I didn't remember it, but Grandpa's farm was passed on to my cousin, and now his sons has it also.
That
so-
farm?
That farm, yeah.
Wow. And
So-
what about these other things here? Can you tell me about them?
This is a house, my daddy's grandfather's house
Wow.
in Minnesota.
In Minnesota.
In Minnesota, yeah. And this, I don't know if you can see this or not. I don't know if that's gonna show up, but that's a picture of a clock. The big picture there. It's a clock that my grandfather made and entered the Texas Fair and won first place with it. So
Oh.
anyway, you want these pictures? This is my mom and dad,
Your mom and dad? And your name?
Helen and Emil Sharkey.
Okay.
And this is my grandmother,
And her name?
is Mary Irvish. And this is my grandpa, Frank Irvish.
Frank Irvish. Wonderful. It's nice that we have so many pictures.
Anyway,
Gosh, that dress it was big.
it was big.
The picture doesn't do it justice. It's huge. Oh my gosh. Okay, and okay, this is actually the last question that we have. Grandpa, what do you want to be remembered for?
Wow, that's surprised me. I guess really, and I think I will be, is being a great grandpa to my grandkids and great grandkids. And it's as simple as that.
Just how much you love them?
That's right.
I mean, nobody questions that one.
Yeah.
And what about you, Grandma? What is something you want to be remembered for?
I am the privileged mother of 6 great kids and a whole bunch of
Whole bunch of grandkids.
great grandkids and great grandkids.
Uh-huh.
And I love every one of them. They're wonderful.
So just for how much you guys loved your family and
Right.
how much they meant to y'all.
Yes, that's it.
Who could want anything more?
That's right. That's what I think.
Well, thank y'all so much for letting me interview you today. I appreciate it, and I learned a lot. It's been nice talking to you.
Okay, that's fine.
Okay. Good.